Hey guys, Michael Ketchen here with another episode of the Michael Ketchen Show. Matthew Hitchcock's in town. Came out to Arizona because he was tired of missing out and me just making fun of him on every episode.
It's cold back home.
You know, it was. That's why you should stay longer, but you're leaving. Joined again by Ian Bishop, the 3-seat, and one of my favorite people I've got to know over the last year, Mauricio. The man, the myth, the legend. You heard what Matt said when you walked in.
Oh, it's first time getting
I was like, I didn't realize my assistant had wired in the money eater. Shit that.
I'm going to give you the quick 20 seconds because you don't know this. I've never said this to you. So here you are the first time. I first came across you on social media years ago when we were first starting real estate, and you're on like Ken McElroy's YouTube channel, like the Suits, and you talk on the laws. And I'm like, oh, this guy, he's this big bad attorney. Then we meet and we're ripping cigars together. We're having wine and getting to PLG. We used to be able to talk about that amazing exit for you, but doing the syndication, I feel like you're the guy that helps really good real estate investors transition into business owners. And the value you're providing cannot be overstated. And I was so happy and honored to have you on this. Thank you for being here.
Dude, I appreciate it. It's very awesome to get to know you a little bit better over the last year or two, however long it's been, and just stoked to be here, man.
All right. Well, we got a lot to get into, but the thing we were just talking about, it's probably a good place to start, is you think like a real estate investor, which is one thing I love about you. A lot of people get in a lot of trouble. And I had a buddy back in Boston. I won't put his name out there because the poor kid, he had a website that was defunct, hadn't done anything on it in years. And someone, to this day, he doesn't know who it is. He ticked someone off. Someone went to the SEC or whatever it is for the local New England chapter, gets this whole investigation. He gets this fine. I mean, it's terrible what he goes through for a year. And all it came down to was he had a website he wasn't using anymore where he was guaranteeing a return and taking money. Yeah. And because he pissed somebody off, someone went and did this. Right. Now, and this is before social media. Right. Now people are doing stuff everywhere. I cringe. We just saw somebody that we know we're going to talk to basically saying, message me the word invest. Yeah. That is a no-no, correct? Am I right there?
Yeah, just about. It's one of those landmines. There's so many landmines that real estate investors step on. And one of the big ones is social media, websites, email communications, right? Because people just don't know. They don't know the law. They don't know what they don't know. And so it's important to understand that when you're in the business of taking money from investors where you're generating the returns, you're issuing securities. I know it doesn't make a ton of sense, especially for us real estate investors. Like, why is the SEC involved? Like, I'm just buying a piece of property. Like, you're going to realize pretty soon that you're issuing securities. So you have either have to register those securities or find an exemption. Mm-hmm. And depending on what exemption you pick on may or may not allow you to do certain things, including posting on social media or websites, right? This particular example, they're planning on using an exemption that actually does not allow you to advertise or generally solicit, right? So if you can't advertise or generally solicit, you should not be on social media. You should not be going on podcasts. They should not be coming on your podcast and talking about the deal and raising capital. Yeah, because that's an advertiser. So it's really, really important to understand what exemption you're going to start raising money. And I know you're probably not raising yet, so it's something you have to think through ahead of time.
Yep.
What exemption are you going to use? Because that'll dictate what rules and regulations and things you can and cannot do moving forward. And even in the ones that you are allowed to advertise, it's not even carte blanche. You were talking before we started that somebody had a website and used the word guarantee, okay?
Yeah. You will not use the G word.
Do not use the
My team has been drilled. We do not use, and we're doing fun stuff now, correctly set up through your guidance. Yeah. And the thing I kept preaching to all of them, do not use the G word. The G word does not exist.
The G word does not exist. It's off the table because that goes to these, what we call the anti-fraud provision. So even in the 506C, which allows you to advertise, so it does allow you to go and say, I'll show a podcast, do whatever. Little, you could go take a ad in Super Bowl. There's still restrictions of what you can't just like do. There's things called anti-fraud provisions. You still can't just promise the sky without proper disclaimers, which is impossible to put in a post. So generally you want to get people off of social, off the podcast, get them onto your page where you can now describe a little bit more what your disclaimers are, what you can and cannot do. But it's one of the biggest landmines. People are, stepping on them and blowing up every single day.
I got to imagine,
how do people figure out where to start? Do they need to start with the end in mind of like, well, if this is how much I'm going to raise, I need to go about it this way? Or do they start with like, hey, this is kind of who I'm going to reach out to first, and so I should do a C versus a B versus something?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So the most common exemptions, like you mentioned, are a 506B, 506C. There are a ton of others, but 90% of people, especially first time, are going to use one of those two. So the question is, well, which one do I choose, right? And they're both actually pretty similar, except for 2 pivot points. I always talk about the 2 pivot points, and depending on your answer to these questions will dictate where you want to go. Number one is, do you plan on taking non-accredited investors? Like if
Can you define that just in case people pretend people don't know?
For Matt, he's kind of new at this because so the rest of us know what you're talking
100 million in property, but it's no idea Ian doesn't need clarification on that or anything.
So a credit investor is generally high net worth, high income individual. So somebody who has $1 million in net worth, excluding their primary residence, or they've earned $200,000 the last 2 years with a reasonable expectation of earning 200 or more this year. And if you're combining with your spouse, that goes up to 300. And then over the years, I've actually expanded that a little bit. So that actually includes some licensing. So you may not have the income or net worth, but you may have a securities license like a Series 82 or Series 7 or Series 35. That may also qualify as a credit investor. But some of these exemptions, like the 506B, which by the way is hands down the most popular, allows you to take a limited number of non-accredited.
36, right?
5.
Oh, 35. Yep. Oh, shit.
So that's
changed it.
So those are noticing. So if you want to take non-accredited, which a lot of people who start want to take non-accredited, because inevitably they're Uncle Bob.
Yeah, I was trying to say friends, family.
They're non-accredited, right? And so 506B is a very, very common exemptions for people who start because they can get those people indoors. So if you come to me and say, I want to take non-accredited, well, you're very limited. You're going to do a B versus if you're trying to decide between a 506B or a 506C, we're going to go B. That's the only one that allows us to.
Well, and I think we talked about this last night. Like one of the benefits of that is as an accredited investor, when you know that somebody is taking friends and family into the deal, it gives you more confidence to be like, oh, they're not just trying to like swindle suckers. Like they're actually bringing their friends, their family into the deal, and it gives you more confidence.
I just had that conversation the other day with someone. Same thing. They were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we like what you guys are doing in terms of like the friends and family aspect."
Yeah, no, that's
Hopefully, my mom's there. I'm like,
usually we talk about putting your own money in the deal. That shows the investor that you were confident. But you're right. If you say, hey, look, my mom's, this deal's so great. My mom is,
Retirement is in this deal.
it's good. That's a good marketing ploy to play with. So that's one pivot point. On the other hand, if you say, well, I really want to go average, I want to go on the Mike Ketchen show. I want to go on podcasts. I want to do meetups. I just want to talk. I want to go on I've got a great YouTube channel. I just want to blast my offerings to everyone. Well, now we have to go 506C because that's the one that allows us to advertise. However, it does not allow us to take any non-accredited. So if I go the advertising route, I've got to stick to accredited investors only, and I have to verify them that they're accredited.
I say that's another big challenge.
third party too, right? Third party verification for
It doesn't have to be third-party verification. I highly recommend a third-party verification because it's such a small cost to you. It's literally $50, $60 per investor that allows you to offload that compliance nonsense. People have tried to do it in-house. Chew it up.
Jumping over $1, pick up a soul.
Yeah,
So
that works.
not even if you have 10 investors, we're talking $500, maybe $1,000 to do it. It's just easier to go to a third-party verification company, in my opinion.
And that's all of that is actually a great segue. Wow, I was really excited to get you on because you're doing something pretty cool, pretty unique that impacts all of our worlds and everybody else is going to listen to this world. What you're doing now, right? And I started with the show with it is, you started with PLG Law. I don't know if you're a founder or not. I don't know the whole backstory, but you since exited that. Still have a great relationship with them, but you're moving kind of into, I'll say, the coaching and value add world.
Yeah.
And what I want to tell people from personal experience, and this is what I want you to take away from this before we get into it. There is, like we talked about in an episode that will air at a later date, who, not how. We raised a lot of debt. We did a lot of things, I would say, maybe willy-nilly when you first get started that we're cleaning up. Largely thanks to you and people like yourself. But what you're doing now is when you first get going, you don't know what you don't know. And you guys made the process very painless over there. And you have a unique opportunity now where you're coming at this from a coaching and advisory, a really unique opportunity we talked about where people can now actually work with you in an advisory capacity. And what I mean by that is like we were hanging out in, where the hell was Christopher's? Actually, it was here. I think it was in Arizona when we were talking. And it might have been Maui. I don't remember. Wherever, we've all been globetrotting all together. Pitch myself. I'm dreaming. But the point is, I said, hey, so talk to me what you got going on. We're doing accountability stuff. It was Maui. And he goes, I said, Mauricio, what I would love is if I could actually hire you to handle, because people, yes, it sounds easy conceptually, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to do a 506B or a 506C. Dude, you start getting these fucking emails where it's like, you got to set up in Wyoming. This person's doing this. And you focus on the deal, the equity, the execution. I was like, I would pay you to come in and get all that off our plate as like the quarterback getting us into the end zone with the securities attorney. Because now I know for a fee, I'm in compliance. And you go, well, Michael, funny enough, in my advisory coaching role, it's one of the services. I was like, done. Talk to us a little bit about what you got going on there and all the tiers to it and all the real estate investors you're working with.
Yeah, so this came up to me when I was actually a Premier Law Group because I was realizing that people would ask us questions. Like if I would do a lot of free stuff online or whatever, and they would ask these really good question. Kind of some of the questions you're asking. And I'm like, well, why?
Oh,
They sound like smart people.
You know what you just did right there? I couldn't have pointed at Matt or anything like that. Now it's over. The EOS guy, boom, you know?
So they're asking me all these questions, and I'm like, dude, what? They're not my clients. I'm like, well, why aren't they asking these questions to their lawyer? Like, this is
Now you don't know.
and it's not that they don't have a lawyer.
Yeah.
Oh, like that's the problem, because what happens is from the time you're thinking about raising money, or you're in, you know, maybe you're even part of a coaching program, or you want to go raise money, you think this is great, next level scale. And the time you actually hire an attorney, which is usually when you're in a contract, if you're doing real estate, it's when you're in a contract, there's this time period where you're out there talking to investors, doing things, stepping in all these landmines, and you don't have anybody to look over your shoulder. You don't have an attorney yet, right? And so that gap is really what I've figured out. I'm like, they need somebody
Yes, we do.
during that time frame so that they stop stepping in all these landmines and have access to somebody that can just, you know, ask questions and say, hey, I'm going to this event. I'm going to Michael's podcast. Can I talk about my deal? Can I not talk about my deal? I talked to this person. I don't really know them. Can they invest? All those kind of questions to address that gap, because I think I've come up, 7 or 8 major landmines that people will always step on that before they get an attorney. Because once you hire the attorney, if they're good and they're a security attorney, you're pretty covered. Like you should be able to have access to them, talk to them. But before then, imagine all the things that happen before then.
Yep.
Give you a good example. One of my biggest cringes, there's 2 cringes. This is one of them, is when I would get a call from a prospective client and they would say, hey, Mauricio, I've already raised all the money. I just need your docs.
Oh, no. And never going to jail.
What are all the things that you had to do to get those soft commitments? Because people don't just do soft commitments out of the blue. You send them, well, you sent them this, you send that, you toss to them. Like, all that stuff is, you're making offers of securities and you don't have any attorney reviewing any documents. So that's like one of the biggest landmines people step on. So I came up with this idea of like, why don't I do this? It's really more of a mentorship thing. I call it a coaching bro. It's really mentorship, where we get together once a week, where I go in and I spend, 10, 15 minutes on some tactical, kind of piece of information. But really what I do then is just open it up to Q&A so people can bring their specific questions so that we can implement what they've been learning out there. Because you can learn about this all the time. I've got a YouTube channel. I mean, all the information is out there. Information is plentiful. But how do you implement your specific situation against that particular legal advice? And that's what we do. We go in here, we answer specific questions. What's been awesome is the feedback I'm getting is that everybody else learns from everybody else's questions. So you may not even have the question.
Yeah.
But because, 20 people asked a question like, hey, I was thinking of that, or hey, I wasn't thinking about, but it's a good answer.
Well, it's sparking it. Yeah. And if it's, think about our experience, think about our first time we did it with them versus how now it's like seamless.
Sure.
When we're just working. I mean, get into that a little bit, that growth and kind of how that went as a real estate investor.
Yeah, I mean, again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So when we first got in and we're just asking simple questions. Again, to your point before, like you made this point, we just think it's very innocent because we operate really well and we know the type of returns that we're getting. And when we're doing that, when you're talking to people, you're like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. You're not guaranteeing it necessarily.
Yeah.
But you think the deals are really good, so you're just passing that information on, right?
Sure.
But you don't realize that there's those implications.
And if it goes wrong, that PPS that again go through.
Yeah, exactly.
And that goes, I have so many thoughts, but if we don't touch on this, why I got you here, because that goes to what we're seeing right now. A lot of the deals that are coming our way are lender takebacks from people that basically got overcapitalized.
Yeah.
Are you seeing a lot? And it's unfortunate. I don't want to say anyone to go through pain, but it does equal opportunity. It's investing. I got to feel like right now those PPMs are getting pulled out and they're going through with a fine tooth comb. And they're looking at, did he promise anything he didn't deliver on? What do you see? I mean, talk us through the PPM and why that is like the Bible of the transaction for things like what a lot of people in the marketplace are going through right now.
Yeah, the PPM's critical because, the nice thing about what we do is syndication and raising capital is you can almost, not everything, but you can almost do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right there. As long as you're disclosing this, because it's so disclosed in this document called the private placement memorandum, right? I always love to give the analogy for those who haven't seen a PPM. I have the most terrible teeth of all times, right? I've gotten oral surgery probably 6 or 7 times. Every time I go in to do this oral surgery, they give you that little medical consent form, like the yellow piece of paper that said, hey, we're going to go, you're going to be put under for like 5 minutes. You could get, some bleeding could happen. Maybe you can get an infection. You could die from this procedure.
Well, we just escalated very quick.
And you review all those risks of the oral procedure, you sign off, the doctor signs off, and boom, they do the surgery. That's what a PPM is. It's like all the ways your deal could go wrong, even if you think the odds are like you don't even think it's going to happen, but just in case, so that if something does happen for whatever reason, you can point to somewhere in the PPM that says, hey, I told you about this. I said this is one of the risks. We explained this is not ATM money. This is not a guaranteed return that's coming to your doorstep once a quarter. This is not ATM. This is you're a business, part of my business. And to the extent there is cash flow, we will distribute some cash flow, but don't assume it's automatic. And we could lose your money for a bazillion different reasons that are all in this document. And so, yes, that's the first thing a plaintiff's lawyer is going to do. And it's not really the investor, it's the plaintiff's lawyer. And I used to work for a plaintiff's lawyer, so I know how they think. They're going to go through not just the PPM, but they're really going to go through like, what did you leave out? What did you not say? And even if you think it's the most innocuous, non-relevant thing, they're going to blow it up. Like this, hey, Michael, you were supposed to wear a white shirt. You wore a black shirt, man. If I had known you were going to wear a black shirt, I would never have invested with you, and therefore I wouldn't have lost my money. Like that's the extent they would have gone. So
Sounds about right.
So you want to have in the PPM, hey, I'm going to wear a black shirt, and that's the thing. And so it's a critical document. But honestly, that's for the lawyer to kind of figure out how to do. You can really structure your deal however you want. We just want to make sure that we disclose all the material facts so that the investor goes in with an open mind. They know all the risks, they know all the rewards, and they can make an intelligent decision whether this is a good investment for them or not.
Oh, perfect. And like I said, since we started leaning into who, not how, and coaching, all that, our business has exploded. And like, perfect example, you had a post the other day that we were just having a conversation with a friend of ours who's interested in possibly being a fund manager, right? So we're going through all the legal docs, doing it the right way. And he asked me a question I didn't know the answer to. And I don't know if you were listening. I don't know if it was out there, but he was like, hey, like, can I like refer people to, if say if I don't want to be a fund manager, can I refer people to you don't have a pre-existing relationship with? And I was like, I honestly don't know. So I'm getting ready to tee it up. You make a post that day for free on Instagram, might add. Like if you're not following Mauricio in real estate, I do not know what the fuck. If he's good enough for Ken McElroy, I assure you he's good enough for you. Okay. So the point is, you put it in there and you're like, no, actually you can like get a referral. You can do it, but here's the right way to do it. Yeah. And the value of, first I just want to say thank you. And the value of content you give. With that said, where can people get a hold of you? They can learn about the consulting business, the coaching business. Where can people reach out and get more?
Best way to do the control, just go to coachingwithmauricio.com. That'll get you a little form you can fill out, and I'll send you some information to see if it's a fit for you. Otherwise, if you've got any other questions, you can just always go to askmauricio.com, and that'll get to me.
That's, I also get a bunch of your emails too. So
yeah. Well, I've started to kind of, I haven't, I was one of those guys which is terrible. Like I tell all syndicators, like, hey, you've got to constantly communicate with your list. I get a little pro tip, like you want to constantly communicate with your investors that are on the list. You don't want your investors to hear from you for the first time in 2 years when you had a deal. Like you want to constantly be adding value. One of the strategies I love was just, even communicating to investors why you're passing on deals. Like, hey, that way they know you're underway, you're looking for deals and you're not.
That's like great. I'm at my phone. Someone zapped me.
That's a great tip. So it's like, hey, we looked at this deal and these are the reasons we didn't do it. Or maybe you got in a contract, this is what we pulled out. And so that way, by the time you do have a deal, 6 months.
We have one right now, right? Real time. I don't know if this will air, but we have one right now. And I'll just talk real world because I don't think this gets us in trouble.
If not, we'll edit it out.
Yeah, we'll edit it out. But this potential deal, the seller is a large player and they drag their feet getting us documents. And as a result of that, we said, hey, we need a 30-day extension per our finance contingency. They're saying, well, no, now we want another $50K to extend. But no, you're not getting a dime from us. We'll blow this deal up because it's a single, not a double, not a home run. We're doing it, which we disclose, because behind it, they have another 600 to 700 units they want to sell. So if it goes well, maybe we can all play ball. But it's little things like that where it's like, I never thought about sharing that hushy insights.
Because then you give them value and B, gives them insight into how you're thinking and how you're under, but also just lets them know that you're looking at deals. Just because you haven't told them there's a deal, you may have looked at 100 deals before this one, which again adds credibility too. We go through thousands of deals or hundreds of deals and we only pull one. By the way, so I was not doing that, and I've started now finally getting back, because a little bit more time now being away from the firm, where I'm, I was doing 2 emails a week. Now I think I'm going to settle into like one email, really high value, just. It's all about value added.
That's totally free.
No, it's totally free. Just a newsletter. I'm actually thinking about rebranding, or it's not really a newsletter right now, but what do you guys think about the syndicator blind spot is kind of like the idea.
Oh, I think that's great.
That blind, is it? Because that's what it is. It's a blind spot during that time where you don't.
I would love that. Well, I'm even thinking as you're talking, like we get it to more off air, but like the opportunities you have that are going to my mind, I'm like, we're about to build out. So we're about to build out an IR role. It's one of the next ones we need, right? That's something we need.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if it's like, hey, after our conversation last night, I'm going to say, okay, Ian, because one of the things we do with Ian is kind of like, hey, we want to go hire, like, kind of help us find a person. We don't want to do that. It's not even use of our time. He's way better at it than we'll ever be or ever want to be. But now I'm like, can we bring in Mauricio? Hey, here's a flat fee. Yeah, I'm going to do this over 6 months.
Right.
You're going to train up our IR department on the legal side. And now that's off our plate.
Yeah.
That's another service that I would literally write you a check for right now to be like, I will talk to your team.
It's platinum.
But that's another thing that's value. So, all right, so we're up against.
Well, that's actually a good question. So, like, could a group put all of their IR reps into your coaching program so that they're all?
That's step one. Is I always say, hey, why don't you bring in, like, maybe, like Mike, you're an experienced guy, you know a lot of this stuff, but you, like you said, a lot of those guys have, chief operating officers, or they have investor relations people, or people who just maybe a little bit newer. They don't know it all as well as the main guy.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll actually join the program, but they'll send their second in command or investor relations to the week.
Yeah. That seems like the value. I got another question for you before we wrap up. So I'm working with a group that is raising capital, but they're raising capital they've got two funds. One's for real estate, but the other one is for buying businesses.
Yeah.
And so does anything shift or change on that world? Because I've seen that seems to be on the come up, that's starting to gain popularity with some of these, like, what we call them boomer businesses, where there's an opportunity to go in and acquire.
Way to segregate part of our listening demographic.
And a big piece of it is, like, just some of these businesses. Well, that's what's interesting is, like, Cody Sanchez preaches the, like, go buy a laundromat. It's like low cash flow, doesn't make sense. Or it's like, hey, we're gonna do a roll up of, like, electricians and plumbers, but now you're still dependent on the tradesmen. These businesses with this particular group are more like manufacturing and infrastructure based, where they're, like, huge and it's trades, but it's like entry-level blue collar, to where they're not dependent on, like, a really skilled 10-year journeyman electrician to be able to keep the whole business together. So it's an interesting model, but just what changes on the raising capital side for businesses versus real estate?
Great question. I'm going to go really high level. So whenever you're raising capital, there's two things you're doing. You're actually raising the capital, right? And then you're deploying the capital somewhere, right?
Yep.
So in most of our world, the raising capital is the same. So raising capital for a real estate deal, raising capital for a business, raising capital for crypto, raising capital for gold and silver. The raising capital part is you're issuing securities. You have to either register, find the exemption, or it's illegal. Most people do 506B, 506. It's the same analysis, right?
Sure.
But the very nuanced difference there is that now, instead of buying real estate, you don't need a license to go buy real estate. You just buy real estate, right? I don't need even a real estate license, right? You just buy it. But when you're buying securities, which is what you're doing with a business, you're buying shares of a company, either all of it or a piece of it, right? So you're buying shares in that company. That's what you're buying. And so you're buying a security now. So you're raising money and you're investing that money into a security. That opens up a bunch of new regulations that we don't worry about when we're doing real estate. For example, the Investment Companies Act of 1940, which I won't bore you with. The investment advisory rules, the investment, all of these different regulatory schemes, even broker-dealer laws come into play. We've got to look at it. I'm not saying it's the end of the world and it's going to be 10 times more complicated, but there is additional regulatory nonsense, I like to call it, that you got to look at.
Yeah, interesting. Because I feel like we hear that sometimes, even just some of the groups that we run in, where it's like, oh yeah, I think I'm just going to go acquire this company, or I think I'm going to go buy businesses, or whatever.
Because it's sexy and it's easy, but they don't. What did we talk about earlier? Everyone is so obsessed with. That's why I'm going to say it again. Like, if you do not follow this guy, you do not know what you're doing, because everyone is so obsessed with the outcome, the shiny Ferrari. Look under the hood. How many mechanics, how many hands touched it? And like I said, we finally leaned in. The first time we did a syndication, we're like, all right, fuck it. We're going, we're squeezing the trigger. We got to go. We're great operators. Dude, the attorney I worked with that first time at PLG probably wanted to kill me, and I wanted to kill him, because all we ever did was debt. And I'm like, dude, I know how to operate real estate. And he's looking to me to quarterback the transaction. And our lead counsel, who's amazing, also my mother-in-law, was a development and a multifamily attorney. And the thing about Kathy is she will not pretend. She is so by the book. She will not pretend to know what she doesn't know. So she's deferring to this guy. And now we're all in like this Mexican standoff where, like, I'm annoyed because I'm like, it's in my mind. He's probably annoyed because he's like, dude, I gave you these docs. She's annoyed because she doesn't know how to articulate. And we had a experience, right? Fast forward, we get through it. I go, oh, okay, this makes sense. I become vulnerable in the mastermind. I asked some of the other guys who actually syndicated. I humble myself because I own more real estate than a lot of them, but I never syndicated. So I started asking questions to people I trust, and I go, oh, I'm such an idiot. This is so much easier. Everyone we've done since, so much better. Jonathan's a fucking rock star. I can't recommend him enough. And we just love it because now we have a cadence, right? But what people don't realize, like, oh, I'm going to go raise money. I'm going to go buy a business. Okay, that's great. That's the Ferrari. Do you know how many mechanics had to build that engine? Do you know how many, what the throttle does, how you shift, all those different things in the process?
Yep.
That's what people get stuck on.
And here's my pet peeve, and this is another reason why I created what I created, is that there are so many coaching programs out there, and they're amazing, by the way. I'm not nothing against these.
No, he's lying. A lot of them suck. It's okay.
But there's amazing programs.
We're honest on him, Mauricio. You go with it.
But these programs give like lip service to the legal part. They usually associate with an attorney. It's like, oh, when you need an attorney, we've got an arrangement with them, blah, blah, blah. Cool. But there's very little education on the legal side. They certainly don't bring the attorney in for that much. And then again, during that gap, during that syndicator blind spot, there's nobody there to help them. So that's really kind of the service that I'm trying to provide, is to plug in that gap. Because the coaching program is just, again, they want this, the shiny object, the Ferrari. They don't really, let's be honest, securities law is not exactly the most fun part of the deal, but it's an important part.
Yeah, it's very. When you said something, I think it actually connects the dots here. Is that you said I got vulnerable and I asked the questions, and I think in a coaching or in a mastermind format, the big mistake a lot of people make is they come in and they say, "I've already solved my problem. Let me tell you my solution and tell me I'm right." Like validate my
Completely closed-minded to it. Yeah.
Instead of being able to come in and say, call it vulnerability, call it transparency. It's like, instead of being able to come in and say, best I can diagnose, here's the issue I have. And then just let other people ask questions and then give you new perspective that you may not have gotten, to then be able to go, okay, maybe this is the best solution, instead of coming in and just going, hey, validate my idea. I've had a couple clients and even friends sometimes where they'll be like, okay, so here's what's going on. Well, and here's what I'm going to do. And what do you think? And I'm like, well, after the, 20-minute dissertation you just gave me, I don't know that you actually want my opinion. I think you just want me to tell you that you're right. So I've actually told a couple of guys, like, do you want me to tell you you're right? Or do you actually want to know what I think?
Yeah, I say it all the time. A true friend doesn't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear. And that's why I'm an asshole. But hey, on that note, he's Mauricio. You know where you get in touch with him. He's Ian Bishop. He's Matthew Hitchcock. I'm Michael Ketchen. And until next time, bet on yourself.